essentially information managers, they provide or they distribute the information timely at the right time for the right purpose.
Okay.
Essentially, among many other different, it's kind of a wide role, I would say.
Is this a new role we invented in construction, or it's been there from other industries? I wonder.
It's actually something that we named recently, something like 15 years ago, when Denmark, for example, started to mandate digital information management. It was back in 2007, actually, the first one. So everybody started to see the need and importance of the information management role. When the new mandate came, it was 2013, then this role was defined, information manager, or in Danish, ikt-leder.
I presume the requirement was there from long time ago, but I presume they identified that the requirement was there. It was not fulfilled. There was need for someone to actually make it happen, and that will be the figure of the information manager. It's not that new then, the role as such. We are talking about more than a decade.
And if we talk about information, like in a broad spectrum, there has always been a need to manage information.
Yeah, in all industries,
in one way
right?
or another. But now we do this digitally, and we prove information management.
I think it's important in this regard that we always had the need for it. We do it, but with this specific team member role, we also have a responsible to ensure that happens and that the requirement is fulfilled.
Exactly. There's actually something interesting about this. We probably come to the next question about my background.
Yes.
Because I have a background in architecture, initially, education. And then I shifted a little bit. I got a bachelor's in architectural technology. And then through my experience, I kind of became fond of this role, information management, because it kind of hit me that information management is something that our industry really craves for. And my journey in Denmark started in 2003, which was the year when something called, it was an initiative. It was a research and developing initiative called digital construction. So the whole wave kind of started to lift and the tide was there. Several years later, after I gained some experience, I was educated, I read a book. And it's Tibsha Lerner who wrote it. Actually, the name of the book is The Witch of Colonia.
Okay.
But yeah, my favorite quote there was that information is like the mortar that can both build and destroy empires.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I always remember this.
I can understand why, yeah.
Information, if it's not correct or if it's not correctly allocated and so on, it can be devastating for the projects.
It's very dangerous indeed for projects at all levels, right? And in the context of construction, misleading information is worse than taking non-informed decisions, right? At least you made that up. But when you are basing your decisions in information that you think is correct, is factual, and actually is misleading, I think that's very dangerous.
I also kind of think it's always nice to remember this because the book was published in 2003. So it all makes sense.
Maybe they drafted the mandate, a little bit inspired with that one.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's fun that the book probably has nothing to do with construction, but in this specific quote, they mention materials and like, so I like that one. Yeah, it's a good one.
You can actually meet it. I've seen it on some different articles.
Okay, so you were not the only one inspired by it, and hopefully most like many in listening to us also can resonate with it.
Definitely.
Since it officially became a role itself in the project's information manager, how have you seen it evolving since then?
This is, like you say, amazing to work in Denmark because we do have this role defined. We've had it for a number of years now. And of course, it's evolving. In the beginning, it was maybe also, it was different software we used. It was a different approach. There was not so much focus on data as it was on the digital representation, like for the 3D modeling. This was our focus mainly. So it's in the recent years that we began to focus on data and how this can be managed within projects for all the stakeholders and during the life cycle of the project from design to operation. So I think in a way, our role is much more valid. It's like much more strong now than it was for several years ago.
It was maybe not evident because data was generated without context. It was not information yet. We were focusing, or the process was focused on 3D representation, as you said, but not that many stakeholders were using that data. The only stakeholders using the data, the 3D representations, were the designers themselves. So they had the power, or they were empowered to shape the geometry as they needed for their own purpose. Yeah. I think that as new stakeholders jump into the chain of usage of the information generated in projects, as more stakeholders are part of the common data environment and they start producing and utilizing and linking and connecting this data together, I think it's become more evident that all that needs to be managed because, if we have total freedom, even though there is a contractual document, which in this case, I presume it will be the BIM execution plan that sets the guidelines and the requirements for the information, naming conventions, what can be generated, how revisions work, etc. But that is there, and very few times I've seen people asking for a BIM execution plan when they are not part of the design team. They are still members of the common data environment. They will read and generate information, but they are not aware that that information is regulated. And there are specific requirements. So I guess that even though there was someone managing it, it was not evident that something was failing. And now it is a need and a very important practice to put everything in order, to put everything cohesive and current.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The flow of data for all stakeholders, for all the phases in the project, and moving from this proprietary way of working with data to interoperable working with data. You mentioned the CDE.
Common data environment.
Yeah, exactly.